Well, well, well. Here we are, guys. It's an impromptu stream. Uh, so you guys are starting to become aware and streaming into the chat here. Big news coming out of the United States
Big
as head
news.
coach Hewerton Moreira has been excused from his duties as the head coach of the U.S. Soccer. Jake here, Luke here. We're
What's up,
doing
y'all?
doing a live stream. I changed some camera settings, and now you guys can really see that my fish tank behind me is kind of dirty. And I was going to either rotate in the room so you guys wouldn't see it and I wouldn't be outed. And then the more I thought about it, this is kind of a good. What's the word I'm looking for? It's a good kind of vision of what is going on at U.S. Soccer. There's this big problem going on, and we're gonna half-ass cover it up. So that is what's going on now. So enjoy my visual for you guys. That's gonna be my excuse for that not being clean. I'm gonna turn it into a creative piece of art. So
There you go.
congratulations to me for thinking on the fly. What we're gonna do, guys, is we're gonna kind of just react live in front of you guys, raw, uncut. We really haven't had a lot of time to think about this outside of initial reactions. So we're going to share with you guys. I want to hear from y'all in the chat. Let me know what you think about this news. What's next from here? Mm-hmm. And I guess, Luke, I guess let me start by asking you a question. How do you think we got here in the first place?
I mean, I think we've shared a lot on this channel already, my thoughts on the U.S. national team. And I think we've covered it, but to do a recap, it's the fingers of indoor soccer meddling in the futsal world. That's the long and the short of it. And we can go down conspiracy theory trails, sure, but the ultimate thing is, and you guys out there in YouTube land, and you and I know just as well as anybody, the one thing that works and the one thing that talks and the one thing that holds sway over any sort of venture is money. It's money. It comes down to money. And it's probably a pessimist. I'm taking a page out of, Jake's book and being a little bit of a pessimist here, but it's true. It's very true. It all comes down to money. Indoor soccer is making money. Indoor soccer has, holds sway. But I honestly, guys, I feel like we can change that from the ground, from the grassroots up. I think that us futsal heads out there need to come together, and we need to be loud and put together a product that's unmatched, and that they have no other excuse than to say, yes, we need to focus on futsal. Yes, we need to have a national team, a national league. I mean, yes, we need to look at futsal players. Yes, we need to look at futsal specific coaches. Yes, futsal is the way. Yes, futsal has a FIFA approved World Cup. Yes, futsal has an approved Champions League, or at least used to. That's how I think we got here. I think, again, U.S. soccer face planting. We can't help it. My heart and my hope is that futsal is the shining light of how to do things right, because it's so little. I feel like if you have a tiny ship, you can be nimble and you can turn and make adjustments. With a big, huge, like monstrous thing like U.S. soccer, it's hard to make changes there. That's such a large institution. But again, I put it on money and indoor soccer. That's how we got here. They're not going to be happy with any other result until we get futsal people in power.
So my thoughts on it is slightly different. I think that the presence of arena soccer and arena soccer people in our decision making and in our structure at USSF certainly has some major impacts, and there are certainly some people who are in interest groups within the futsal community in the United States that are influencing decisions, good, bad, and indifferent. The problem I have stems closer to the fact that we had something that was working, and the way it was working, U.S. Soccer decided they didn't like that and killed it. And in doing so, and in disbanding the Duchamp era, and the manner that they did, and it being one of the worst kept secrets in how they did, turned the futsal community against U.S. soccer in a big way. I don't think that when U.S. soccer made that decision, they thought that there was as much loyalty towards Dusan within the general community as there is.
Yeah.
And in doing so, they soured so many people that could have had an impact on the future of the game under Moreira's tenure, that he was set up to fail from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So for me, the way I see this is a kind of a two-pronged thing. Number one, I think that U.S. soccer absolutely, positively failed Moreira. He was not set up for success. He was plugged into this team at a sensitive time in a cycle to qualify for a World Cup, had very little time to train, virtually zero funding, if any. They did find a way to fund a trip to Argentina to face club teams behind closed doors. But the reality is, while they were doing that, everyone else in CONCACAF were facing each other or like competition of other national teams.
Yeah.
So it just was too little too late. And then the other thing is, everybody I talked to in these different circles is telling me that players also were soured on it and decided not to support and represent the U.S. national team. And to do that is to give up the highest honor in sports. These players gave up the highest honor in sports, which is to represent your country, to make a statement. And the thing about it is that I don't know how I feel about that bit of it. I'm torn because I think that when it comes to representing the country in any kind of form or fashion, whether it be our sports, even to our servicemen and women, there seems to be a sense of pride that goes along with that and duty that comes along with that, where you put the politics aside in a lot of ways. But it's hard to ignore in a situation like this when you're to stick with that generalization is to say your general is suddenly just axed while you're in the middle of the battlefield. I mean, that's insane. So in doing so, U.S. soccer also failed the futsal community. And so not only did they fail Moreira, they failed the community. The community responded. There's been lots of negativity towards the way we performed at CONCACAF. And unfortunately, Moreira did not do himself any favors in the way that he coached and the players that he was able to bring. Very flat. We've talked about it enough times on the channel. You guys can go check the receipts on me. Very flat, very boring.
Yeah.
Clearly arena soccer players on the court. That worked for us really well back in the 90s when futsal was still up and coming. But now the rest of the world has moved on, adapted to futsal, and evolved. And U.S. soccer has not. They've stuck to this arena soccer model. And when they finally had something that was working, they killed it. They just don't have the vision to support this program correctly, in my opinion.
I 100% agree. And speaking to what you said about Moreira, yeah, he was doomed to fail. In the same way, you can say that Dusan was doomed to fail.
Yes.
It's just they keep setting these. U.S. soccer keeps putting these coaches and these programs out, and they're doomed. They're doomed from the beginning. Berhalter was doomed. What did you expect? I just don't get how they put all these coaches out, even on the soccer side. And I think, well, who was it? Klinsmann? He was doomed. They're all doomed. They cut the legs out from under them. They give them no true power, or they don't give them funding, and they expect something to happen. And all the while, we're patting these little kids on the back, saying, "Billy, you're great. Billy, you're great. Billy, you're great," and yet we fail to produce on the international level.
Well, and it highlights the bigger picture, right? Is exactly what you're saying, is that U.S. soccer as a organization is fundamentally broken top to bottom.
Yes.
It needs a complete overhaul.
Yes.
In a lot of different ways. We are failing the children of this country. We are failing the national teams of this country. We are failing in a lot of ways. And we just refuse to evolve. And I think a good example of refusing to evolve on a more mainstream scale is the women's national team. This is a team that was untouchable in a lot of ways. Only a select few countries kept up with us in the women's game because we already had that infrastructure in place. But, it's not the 90s anymore. The world has evolved and the world is surpassing us, and our program is stale. And we're seeing that in a lot of the things that we're involved in, because it's not about the results on the pitch. It's not about the results on the court for U.S. soccer. It's about the money making machine.
Yeah.
It's about it being a money making machine is really what it is, and they're printing money. So why would they change it? It's the same way that an NFL team doesn't change when they're losing because their fans are still buying tickets and sitting in the seats in the freezing cold November. As a Browns fan, I can say that they've gotten better recently, of course. But look at that history. Those stadiums are always full. So
Mhm.
why would you invest any more in the product? And that's kind of what's going on here in a larger scale to me. And then more importantly, I've said it from the very beginning on this channel is I think that the community has to force some change. I think that we have to be a loud consumer, just like we would be at the store, just like we would be at a sporting event if our local team is not performing up to par. And we need to, in that token, do something that holds the powers to be accountable. If they're not going to do this for us, then we need to do it. And we need to force their hand a little bit. So those are my initial thoughts and Luke's initial thoughts on this. We just wanted to go live and talk to everybody, kind of get some takes. If anybody knows better than us, I mean, chime in. I see Last Letter, who's a good friend of the channel and another content creator for futsal, is chiming up in the chat. Hello. Seems to be hope that good players will just pop up instead of building a system that produces consistently and good players. Yes,
Yep.
100%. We talk about the
100%.
gap in U.S. futsal all the time that there is at the high school level. There's no outlet. We lose these kids to ECNL and all these other programs that can give them a consistent path to college or to universities with scholarships and things, or that MLS Next path or whatever it is. And we don't have that on the futsal side. I think if someone can hack that, then it changes the game. For me personally, I take a look at, and actually Last Letter and I were just talking about this before we went live, is you look at a country like France, and they have put a ton of infrastructure and money around building the game at the school level. It is accessible to all students in their schools as a phys ed program. And then they've built around that. Okay, now let's put the local clubs in. Now let's put the professional clubs in. Now let's qualify for our first ever World Cup coming up in Uzbekistan. They've created a model that works, and it starts with filling that gap. We've just refused to do that. I think too, another problem is look at the people that are leading our youth futsal programs. I mean, even when there is an opportunity to pull talent, we're pushing them to arena soccer instead of futsal. Even our own futsal people are doing that, and everyone's guilty of it. We've seen our futsal leagues advertise combines. We've seen USYF's directors advertise the combine, and they don't talk about futsal pathways anymore.
I mean, just this has even happened recently. I shared this with Jake just the other day. That Keith Tozer, who is the spokesman for U.S. youth futsal. I mean, he is the figurehead. He is the leader of that program. Sure, there's other people in charge, but he's kind of the figurehead. And I'm on my futsal forums on Facebook, and he's advertising, coaching clinics for indoor. He's advertising combines for indoor. And I called him out on it. And I said, hey, man, you need to keep it on track here. And so that is a huge problem that we're pushing towards indoor. Indoor is futile. There's no one else is playing indoor. Just so you guys know, the world is playing futsal. We need to get on board with futsal. That's just the way it is. I don't make the rules. It's just the way it is. And speaking to the system, who is producing the top soccer players? Who is producing the top futsal players? Who are they? You're looking at Argentina. You're looking at Brazil. You're looking at Portugal. You're looking at Spain. They're both producing on the soccer level and on the futsal level. And what you see here is a system, top to bottom, where it's focusing on letting the kids play and play for free. It's well known. It's well established. Your Christian Pulisic, the reason he's good is because he left the United States. That's why he's good. He went to play in another system that helped him get to that next level. We struggle. We're good at the first level, even though we're just taking money from people. But that gap from you're young to professional is a huge thing in the States. And again, what you said, Jake, is if it ain't broke, then don't fix it. Why would they put any money in? Because they're still getting the same amount of money. All they're doing is losing money. How do we
Yeah.
fix that?
J Dub says in the comments, there needs to be a way for clubs regionally to collectively make that impact. Many have academies that have promising young talent, but have no pathway to continue futsal develop after 19 years old.
Yep.
Yeah, very true. I mean, that lays right into what we mentioned earlier is, we lose our youth at a certain age. And, everybody I do talk to that's involved in the academy space tends to agree that magic age group is like 12 to 13 years old as they're hitting high school. And then after that, they're gone. And
Yeah.
unless they move back to their the cities where they grew up playing futsal, we really never see them again. So I want to shout out a academy down in Alabama called Birmingham Futsal,
Mhm.
and they've really found a way to break the mold and support futsal growth through those age groups. And they've done some unique things. They're not in this cookie cutter process of, okay, we're a part of United Futsal or USYF, and here's the pathway to them that takes you to this pathway of being on a fake US national team to
Mhm.
participate against hopefully real clubs when we get there. Because we've seen some failures with that, where they're not playing quality clubs when they travel to a country, and as a part of that money trap. So I think that they are doing a really great job of running some of their own trips, controlling the quality. I'm seeing them post about it on social media. It's not a secret. They went to Portugal and played with Sporting Lisbon's first team, Ziki Tay, who was voted the best young player award for the Euros in their last iteration at 20 years old, is playing with these kids from Alabama, man, in
Mhm.
Lisbon. That's amazing. That's so amazing. And then they just posted recently as well that one of their kids has one of their girls from their academy has signed with Sporting Lisbon and
Mhm.
will be going to university in Portugal and playing for their women's team in their women's program.
There it
I mean,
is.
that's huge. That's what we need. And I mean, there is no creative thinking going on here to support those age group brackets, and that's why there isn't this feed of talent through there. But I do want to give Moreira some credit in what he was doing recently. I noticed him at the USYF finals. I noticed Marcia there as well in a lot of posts. It's all pictures of them rubbing shoulders with all their old MASL buds, but they were there recruiting. And it seems from what I've heard from viewers of the channel that the focus was on that age group, Jay. So that's something that's interesting that I'm hearing out of there. I'm getting that secondhand, but I am getting it from someone who is physically there watching it happen. So I believe it. This has been a real good source for me that is asked to remain anonymous, but I believe them when they tell me stuff. There's typically a lot of legs behind what they say. And his focus was on that 19-year-old group. And it appears that might actually be the case for Marcia as well, as she's building out her first roster to pursue the first ever Women's World Cup as well. So one of the other things that's curious is, well, actually, hold on. Let me address this from last letter. I think the University World Cup would be huge for America too. I agree. Right now in the U.S., we have Westcliff University pursuing futsal. They're having a really hard time, getting others to join them in that pursuit. But there is a University Cup challenge for the world, and we see some blowouts in that through the process. But it's a great program and a great opportunity to maybe provide some value outside of the Olympics as a threshold for these university sports. Because a lot of times the pushback from NCAA is they're waiting for futsal to become an Olympic recognized sport before they invest in it.
Right.
I've heard that on a couple occasions now, and this is another pathway. There's multiple pathways and everything, and I think that's part of the reason futsal gets held down in a lot of ways. Is I think there's a fear that they will pull from the talent pool to feed this soccer machine. There's a certain kind of way that all this makes money, and this disrupts it a little bit when it's successful. But the reality is if we did it right, there'd be plenty of people for everybody, and the futsal development would directly benefit the soccer development because people are going to want to play soccer. Not everybody loves futsal like we do. They use it as a training tool, but they might hate it while they're doing it. I hated running during conditioning when I played soccer, but I did it. It's part of that grind. Your true athletes will do it. But others just love the path and don't have a way to get to the end game that everybody else has in these other countries. So
I
it's
think
tough.
there's no excuse if soccer is going to play the card, it's pulling away from our thunder or stealing our thunder. That is such a poor excuse. We live in the biggest, richest country in the world. There is no excuse. There's none for us to lack. We should be dominating for soccer. We should be dominating futsal. There's no other way around it. We should be the NBA dream team. We should be. There's no, but the thing is like we run into the standard conversation of, are they going to go play football? Are they going to go play baseball? Are they going to go play basketball? And then again, if we do have young people interested in playing futsal or soccer, that gap from youth play to professional is huge. Shout out to MLS. They've come a long way and they're bridging that gap. Things are happening. You're starting to see young players come in and, bridge that gap. But, we're a long ways off. But we need to start getting there with futsal. We need to start getting there with NFPL. We need to start getting there with FCS. We need to start getting there with Superliga. And the thing is, in my opinion, I've said this before, until we all come together and sing Kumbaya and hold hands and go together, we just or else we do the powerful thing, which is a big name or some big money comes in and does it right. I think we're not there yet. We just aren't there yet. But yeah, again, shout out to MLS. I think they're doing some things, and I think we have a lot to learn from that model. It's a slow and steady model, but you're starting to see things working.
I think, and what's interesting about that comparison is I think a few years ago, maybe a little bit longer now, but you would never think you would shout out MLS for anything. They were so dysfunctional.
Yes.
I mean, look at how far they've come, though. They've been able to turn that ship around and really make an exciting product that's interesting, and they're filling stadiums.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that you said, Luke, that I might not completely agree with is I don't think we're going to be at a level of dominating the sport just because we're so far behind the rest of the world in adapting soccer and futsal. We're literally decades behind in development from everybody else. But at the same time, we are in the current world where we could pull the correct resources to help us get there in an expedited fashion. But
yeah,
where we stand right now, and I would argue even under Dushan's era, we're nowhere near a level where we could be considered a dominant force even in our region, let alone the world. But that kind of stuff takes time, and you got to let somebody cook. You got to let somebody do it.
Mm-hmm.
And we pulled we really pulled the legs out from under the program. We insulted the community if we're thinking of U.S. soccer right now. And hey, we really messed this up. They dropped a giant atom bomb on the futsal program and didn't care. They didn't even bat an eye doing it, which is insanely frustrating because you had a guy that even though he was getting paid beans, was giving it a full-time effort plus some, traveling this country on no budget, finding a way to fund it on his own, finding a way to create his own youth player pools and develop players properly for futsal, not arena soccer. And I think that says a lot about why it was canceled. But that I call me conspiracy theorist, but the people that are currently in charge, the old guard, and I underline old, they're fearful of what futsal could be. They know that if it grows legs, that it will kill the arena soccer game. I think it will take time to get there, but it will eventually do so if it catches fire. They should be, and they should be fearful, because if that's what they love, it should be going away if this thing gets worked right. The other curious thing is, beyond Moreira, this coaching staff for me, from its announcement and seeing who he brought as a third coach to CONCACAF was not very impressive to me. Top to bottom, the coaching staff was not very dynamic. They did not adjust well to the way teams were playing against them in CONCACAF. They did not adjust well to what wasn't working for the team ourselves on the court. There was no change in tactics. There was no effort to make a big change or a big swing to make a difference in that competition. It just was what it was. Um, so, talking to someone before we went live briefly, it was mentioned that typically in these programs, the whole staff dissipates. And I don't think that that's going to be a bad thing. What's interesting about that is with the one assistant coach, Sasha, I think is his name. He is also a part of the women's program. So, he'll still be around in some capacity, I'm sure. So does he just focus on the women's side now or what? I don't know, but I don't even know who you pick next. And I have argued with the people who have asked. I say argued. I'm not that big of a jerk offline, guys, but I've bantered, I should say, when people say, "So what's next? Who's next?" I say, "Who cares?" Because if U.S. Soccer is not going to support it, it doesn't matter whose name's on this program as the head coach. It really doesn't. It seems what they're looking for is just someone to fill the seat and say that they have a closed vacancy. But I don't know that U.S. Soccer is really truly interested in supporting futsal. Oh, hello. Sorry, my external hard drive kicked off and on, and so if you guys heard that on the stream, I apologize. But
no, you're good.
But yeah, I almost hope that no one I know goes for it and gets it because I don't want to see this happen to them. Until U.S. Soccer comes out, I think they have to do what at least mimic what France did, even if they don't put the same money behind it, and just say, "Hey, here's our plan." They've got to come out with a plan. Here's how we plan to support futsal. Here's 2025, 26, 27, 28. And, they should do what France is doing and come out every year or so in their annual meetings and say, "Hey, here's what we planned for the year. Here's what we accomplished. Here's what we didn't. Here's how we're adjusting," like a business.
Yeah.
And they're just not doing that. And so whoever the coach is, it almost doesn't matter. I hate to be that pessimistic, but if you're not going to support the guy, then what difference does it make? They could put me in there. Right. It won't make a difference. There's nothing I can do if I don't have any resources to actually make a difference and build this program. If that's not what they want, then there's really no reason for them to be managing futsal at all in the way that they are. And I think that along those same veins, I don't think that U.S. futsal should be part of the extended national team. One I think it should be its own standalone program within U.S. Soccer, and it should not be tied into 9 other teams that one person is managing all these extended national teams. Like, no wonder we suck at managing this. That's way too much for anybody to manage on a budget that they all share, by the way.
Just going back to a point you made with Everton, kind of with you kind of talking about his tactics and his shift and what he did. On one hand, we spoke about this before. He was given limited resources, limited time. And I agree. But at the same time, I want to say in my heart, it is, if it were me, if I were in his shoes, I would have pulled futsal players. But he pulled indoor players and he pulled who he knew.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. It just makes me wonder, like, what was, I wish I could be in on discussions of what U.S. Soccer talked about with Everton and their expectations. I mean, Jake and I, we talked about another situation and talking about expectations. So, what are the expectations? Like, what did they say to him? And what did he do in order to get dismissed on his first run out? I mean, he was only coach for a year. Was it 2?
Less. I think less than a year.
Like how
maybe a full year.
How has U.S. Soccer come to this conclusion that his time is up? What are we looking at? What's the measurement? What's the scale? What's the point system? And again, it speaks to what you're saying. It doesn't matter. I wish we knew, because then we could kind of start saying, like, well, okay, like, who's right for the job? Who can do it? Or should we even bother with going live on YouTube with the dismissal of Everton? You know what I mean? Where are we at? I wish we could have someone speak to that. But at the same time, I just wish he would have given futsal players a chance. Because at the end of the day, I would have rather seen Grand Rapids Olay, just all their squad, versus any of those teams versus what he put out on the floor.
So yeah, I'm going to argue, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just playing devil's advocate for the sake of
You're fine.
the conversation. Is when you think about where our futsal leagues are at currently, um, and you think of where we are in relation to MASL, uh, where does he go to do that?
What do you mean?
Like that, where is the resources for him to be able to recruit actual futsal players? You know, you look at the guy; he's a head coach in MASL,
Yeah.
so he's already got a full plate. And you know, one thing that I've overlooked in talking about his tenure is, and I should probably address, is his own fans in MASL at Utica City were mad at him about this appointment because they knew it
Really?
would take away from his time at Utica City to
Oh,
build their local team. When he pulled what was it, 3 players from his team to join him in Nicaragua for CONCACAF, fans were blasting that on Utica's page because they were in the semifinals of MASL tournament time and their head coach and 3 of their best players just up and leave and go to another country. If you don't follow futsal and you're just strictly a Utica City fan, I mean, that sticks in your craw a little bit. But the other thing goes back to the resources a little bit in this question, but like how does he recruit the futsal players? Like there's not a clean way to do that for someone that isn't plugged into a league, because there's limited resources to even air. And we've lived that, right, Luke? Like there's limited resources to how you can air this in a way that he can even go back and look at film and pick out who those people are. And then, you know, where do you go to like the amount of work and admin that would go into that, I think is extremely demanding. So anyone that has a job outside of futsal, I don't think can do it effectively. I really don't.
that's true, and that's true. But I still think, even just watching YouTube, watching our streams, I feel like that's the point. And honestly, you could just go through the score sheets and see who the best team is. I mean, that's
At
to
least know
me.
what games to look for.
Yeah, exactly. And you start looking at, you start looking at your Sammys, your oh gosh, why did I lose all their names just now?
Let me chime in with my favorite from last year. Is you take a look at an outstanding young guy like Gabe Villagomez that came out of kind of
Exactly.
nowhere with Olay and just literally ran roughshod on every statistic column. I mean,
Yeah.
that should raise a green flag for you that hey, maybe I should drag my ass out to Grand Rapids and take a look at this kid, or maybe I should call Fabian Rodriguez and see if he's got any film of the kid. You
Right.
know, that's the kind of stuff that
That's
so much
easy
of
stuff.
futsal community is knowing people.
He's gotta know that. I mean, from pulling Dono, he's got to know that there's something in FPL. He's pulling a goalie from our league, from NFPL. So you pulled one. Why wouldn't you? What makes you think there wouldn't be 2 or 3 more
Well, and why
at
don't you
least?
ask Robert?
Yeah, ask Robert.
And maybe those conversations are happening. We don't know. We're not there, but I would
Damron,
assume they're
not
not.
Dono.
If
Damron. I said his name
no,
wrong.
you're all
Excuse me.
right. I thought that was his new cool nickname or something. But
No, sorry.
oh, okay.
I'm
No, you
having a
can.
I'm having a senior moment.
No, you're good. You're good. No, but yeah. Hey, Robert, you're in a league. Who do you see that you like? Who do you hate to see running down the court at you?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, who lives in your nightmares during the league season?
Right.
You know, or why isn't? I mean, I don't know. Why is it that we are only recruiting futsal players at these national tournaments and regional tournaments, and then we're only looking at the youth of our country at those national tournaments. Like, so we're recruiting for futsal 2-3 times a year.
Yep.
If they were anywhere else, we'd be seeing those pictures plastered all over social media like we do when they're, you know, hugging USYF executives and, you know, at USFF games on the sidelines, like they used to get pictures of Dushan doing that and post them. And, oh, look who's in the house. Because then those guys get to brag that they're there and there's being recruitment. That provides value. That provides value to those tournaments, and more people spend their hard-earned cash on flying out and checking it out and participating, that knowing that there's people who mean something, who matter in the crowd watching to see if they qualify. I mean, that's a big part of it, but we should be seeing more of that
Right.
if
And
it's actually going to develop correctly. But
uh,
again, the resources aren't there.
exactly. And then, I mean, I know of some people who are just aching for that chance to show off, capable players to play on the national team. And so where are those opportunities? Where are
Yeah,
the coaches? Where are the coaches going to be? How can I get in contact with the coach to say, "Hey, I think these players are legit. Can you take a look?" Or how do we get them in front of these coaches? again, growth in our national league, would be key. But also just growth as a structure, as a futsal entity as a whole, without it being something like volunteer hours and not getting paid anything. Um, I don't know. I still think he dropped the ball on not taking futsal players with him. That was my main point.
Well, and part of that kind of goes back to what I said in the beginning is the community turned on him. He was the fall guy. Some of the futsal people he did ask to participate, some of Dushan's old players that he did ask to participate, just flat out told him no. Whether it be on principle or interest in other things or whatever. But so I was not impressed in his short time. But I don't want him to be at the end of this channel's conversation pictured as the bad guy. I think he's the fall guy.
Sure.
You were never going to win the community over. You were never going to do what Dushan did, because Dushan went so far above and beyond what was required of him by U.S. Soccer.
Right.
You were never going to win that. And whoever the next guy is ain't going to win either. It's going to be the exact same thing all over again. There's a level of bitterness. There's still not enough time that's gone by. Mm-hmm. And there's a lack of trust across the futsal community as well. I think that that's a big looming dark cloud that's been over U.S. Futsal scene for a long time. Is in a lot of ways and in a lot of channels, there's a lack of transparency and a lack of trust. And there's a lot of people who are fearful to do what we get to do and say what they think. Because they think they have too much to lose and they'll be punished for speaking up, and that's a shame. This futsal community in the U.S. is almost run more like a mob instead of like a community, and it's ridiculous, and it's never going to grow that way. And I strongly believe that until there's a change in decision makers within the futsal community in the United States, that we're kind of hard stuck. We got to find a way to work around those people and prove that we're more passionate than they are willing to hold us down for. And I think we can get there. I would like to be a part of that. I'd like to find a way to do that, and we're working on that. Luke and I are trying to figure out, where we fit in that equation in the background. How can we really put our money where our mouth is and actually apply some of our passion in a way that forces U.S. Soccer to look at us and say, hey, there's something here, or get out of the way and let the people who actually care handle it. So hopefully you guys feel the same way in the chat. I mean, I know, seeing some of the names that are flashing through here, that you're regulars with the channel and regulars that I talk to on a almost weekly basis in a lot of ways. Right. So I know that we've got a good team built up just here in our chat that could get us there. So
I put up,
figure it out.
I put up Matt's comment, Jake, of culture, economics, and distractions. Did you want to address that?
Yeah. So I think, Matt, that's really sums the whole problem up, right, with U.S. Soccer as a whole. And maybe U.S. Soccer needs to give up their Adapt and Thrive initiative and just use this instead. Be a little more transparent. But that's what it really comes down to. Is this is beyond one guy. This is a U.S. Soccer failure to me in every way, every single way.
100%. I think you're right. Hewerton is the fall guy. But again, I still want to know, what did he do in such a short time to get dismissed? Like, is it because he didn't qualify for the World Cup? Is that how petty we are? Is that just the one thing we're going to, lump him on? You give him a 2-week run up and then he doesn't do it and you dismiss him. Is that how cheap our sport is? You know what I mean? I just feel like, again, shame on U.S. Soccer. Shame on the federation. It's just such a mess. I think, they gotta put forth something. And again, I feel like it's a huge opportunity for the U.S. to really make headway in one of these sports, in a soccer related sport. Because I think you're right, Jake, when you said earlier, we have a long way to go. I do think that. I think we should be. And whether or not we could be is another thing. We should be great. We're not. Can we? Yeah, we can. We're making kind of headway a little bit. We're still getting mommy and daddy writing emails saying that their Billy didn't get enough playing time on the national team. But, that's just unimaginable. But the thing is in futsal, we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to do something different. And we won't make that many waves because there's nothing really here. I think US should I think they should focus on futsal, prove a model, and show soccer how things can be done, and write a success story with futsal, especially with
Yeah.
the men. Especially with the men. I think the men need they need a win. I think the men are getting beat up. I think the talent for the US national team is getting beat up in the soccer program. And how many times can you get kicked? Like, how many times can you get kicked in the teeth and not qualify and drop out early? It's just getting too much, like they need a win. Like, we just can't keep doing this. And if US soccer cares at all about making progress, like, you got to get a win under your belt. You need
Yeah.
something for these players, and you need to stop doing the coach carousel on both soccer and futsal. And you need to really cement down, like I said, what's the measurement? What's the measurement here? Be transparent. Show us what success is. Show us what failure is. What goal are we going for? I think Klinsmann was on a track, but I think again Klinsmann jumped in to a system that was like, "You'll do what we say. You're the name. That's it." Because I think he was really going for top to bottom wholesale change, and it just went awry.
Yeah, and I think when you look at, you mentioned the timing of this and how bizarre. I wonder. So was the plan all along? Hey, this is our short-term fix. This is our band-aid on the hole in the dam. Let's just get through this cycle and end it. And now it's a new cycle. The World Cup begins at the end of mid-September in Uzbekistan. So as far as the US is concerned, it's a new cycle. We're not going, we're not participating, so it's time to work. So what I'd be curious to see is what's the next step from US soccer.
Right.
Do they come out? So do they already have someone figured out? Because when they released Dushan, they didn't. There was a hiring process. So do we go through that again? Is it going to take some time for us to figure out who our guy is? And then once it is, do they make any kind of announcement, or which my gut says absolutely not, but do they make any kind of announcement that says, here's how we plan to support and grow futsal, and here's our initiatives and what this guy needs to do to succeed? We typically don't get to see that kind of stuff in the form of sports. We usually just, in bigger sports, what we see is how much they're paying the guy. And then when they fire him, we see how much he was guaranteed. We don't get to see the inner workings of here's what his goals were to get to this number. You're paying for results in sports. You're paying for expected results. So although our budget is very slim, it can be assumed that, this is the same way. Is okay. They have brought you in and they've put you on a pay structure and a program and a time frame to accomplish something. Obviously, with the looming CONCACAF right on the doorstep, that was where the results needed to come from. So is this a quick acts of an experiment, and now we build something up legitimately during our quote unquote off season of the cycle? So I'm curious to see, will there be no more support for the next person? To me, it's very clear that Moreira was just the fall guy, and just a quick. I mean, they should have just called him an interim head coach, and just gotten through this and then done this the right way if this is how it was going to go down. But reading some articles and seeing some things before, during, and after CONCACAF, I think people thought that the U.S. would still show up and qualify this year. And I feel like I knew from the minute that Dushan stepped away that program was imploding. And I think people closer to that scene knew it was imploding. But the general public, they thought, oh, well, he's built it up to this, we'll just keep building up. No, it crumbled. It absolutely crumbled. So it's tough to see happen. It's always harder to see when it's happening to a program you care about. And but I am going to stick to my mantra of this channel for the last 2 years: is futsal people need to prove that we care about futsal. So even though we've had this setback and are still suffering through it in a lot of ways from CONCACAF, I think that you guys showing up to stuff like this makes a big difference. It shows you care. This is a teeny tiny little channel in the grand scheme of things, and we still get all this interaction and conversation from you guys on and offline. I appreciate every little bit of it. I appreciate you guys letting us kind of live react to this and say some things that are very, in a lot of ways, off the cuff. But maybe this is more of what we need to do to keep these conversations going. Jay asks, what are some ways we as futsal lovers and players can do the right thing now, or do that right now? Excuse me. Um, Jay, I think for me, it's a lot of it is just showing up. We don't show up on an adult level in a lot of ways. We don't show up at that high school level in a lot of ways, and I think that what we need to do truly is show up and question the status quo and continue to question it and be a little braver as a community about showing up in the right ways and proving to USYF, United Futsal, and USFF and US Soccer that hey, there are people that are starving for a pathway, and we're not giving it to them. There's legs to this. Help us support it or get out of the way. And I think that for me, Jay, one of my goals, and I'm working on it now. It's kind of happening in teeny tiny pieces, but just to kind of give you guys a little pull behind the curtain here, is I'm trying to set up interviews with the big futsal organizations of this country on this channel. Create this platform, get USYF in front of the camera, get United Futsal in front of the camera, get USFF in front of the camera with you guys, and say, hey, let's create a neutral space and let's talk about how we move forward. I'm not here to bash you and say what you're doing is wrong, but I would also like them to sit here and justify to me why it is the way it is. Change my mind and do it kind of like Joe Rogan style, where he clearly doesn't agree with everybody that's on his podcast, but he sits and listens and has a back and forth. We need to do something kind of along those lines here and question the status quo and force some change here. I would encourage you guys to keep showing up, keep supporting local futsal. I think that's the other path to this too, is we need to protect our backyards in a lot of ways. And that's showing up to your local teams. That's if you're a business owner, supporting your local futsal clubs and academies, give these kids a path, an appropriate path. And, from there, we kind of got to just pound the drum in a lot of ways. Last letter said it too, organize and show up. Yeah, exactly. I think that's the only way we do it, is we as the people of this community need to become a bigger and bigger entity. We need to be a noisier entity as well.
So Jake, I put it in the chat and I'm going to put you on the spot. Who's your shout for the next U.S. men's national futsal team head coach?
Oh boy. So, like I said earlier, I almost hope no one I know gets it because I don't want to see them go through this pain and suffering. But at the same time, if U.S. Soccer is prepared to take this seriously, my top domestic pick would be Fabian out of Grand Rapids. I think that he has expressed interest in it in the past. He clearly knows his stuff. He has gone through literally generations of players in the adult scene here, and has had a winning record all the time, every time. He's always been on the podium. I think that he has access to the true player pool for futsal in a lot of ways, and could build this thing up correctly. Outside of that, again, if U.S. Soccer is to take this seriously, maybe they need to look outside of our own borders and find someone that can help us build an appropriate program. Maybe we need to look at a Brazilian leader. Maybe we need to look at a Portuguese leader that can then take us into the next era and truly build off of what Dusan has already done and amplify it with a big old freaky magnifying glass. And I think unless you get someone from there, Spain, Brazil, Portugal, one of these big countries, Morocco, Iran, Japan, like these countries that are truly fostering the game and the sport, then I don't think that there's any chance of a change in mentality to get it to the next level. But that is, again, going to require a big check from U.S. Soccer and a reality check from U.S. Soccer that, yes, we're ready to invest and do this right.
Agreed. I think, you had my pick as well. Fabian is a great shout. And it doesn't just lie with the coaching, the W's and the L's. It has to do with, and we talked about this just the other day, Jake, is Fabian's understanding of top to bottom building programs, understanding how to pull kids through programs all the way up to the top level and play at really high levels, and how to operate, how to deal with the personalities, the players, the parents, whoever else is involved. I mean, this is a coach that has obviously proven his worth through Grand Rapids Ole and what they've done over there. I couldn't think of a better shout domestically. As far as internationally, no clue. I mean, I just don't know futsal that well. I would be looking at places like Thailand. I would be looking at places like like the standards, the Portuguese and the Spanish and the Brazilians and the Argentinians. Those are really good shouts. But yeah, I think, having an understanding of how to build a program, and also, like you said, Jake, the second part of that statement is, will U.S. Soccer support that and get behind it with not only their voice, but also their pocket?
Hey, Ricardinho just ended his stint at Riga. Maybe he's ready to coach. There's some pie in the sky for you.
That would be that guy's awesome.
There's some insanely unrealistic comments there from me.
Hey, crazier things have happened.
It is sports.
If they're serious, hey, what if Messi comes over?
Yeah, hey, all those guys say futsal's what got them going. I mean, and you're talking about Messi coming from a country where they literally have futsal courts under freeways. They're putting them wherever they fit, just to get kids a safe place to play. I mean, come on, let's get real here. Well, guys, with that, I gotta cut it off and take off. But I wanted to make sure that Luke and I were chatting after, and I want to thank the fans of this channel, because I actually got this texted to me from a viewer before I even saw it in my feed. So thank you guys so much for being this passionate. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. This was this was extremely off the cuff. Luke and I were texting back and forth on, do we go live? Should we just turn on a camera and start talking about it? We may sound wrong, in a couple months from now, we may cringe at this live stream, but for now, I think we said what we believe, and that's the most important thing. And I think that the community needs to continue to be loud. And if you guys are in a position, like I said, that you have too much to lose, maybe you have a kid in an academy and you don't want to ruin their future. Maybe you own an academy and you're worried that, your organization will be biased against you for being vocal. Share it with me and I'll share it anonymously here, and we'll at least get the word out. I got nothing to lose, guys. I'm not tied to an organization. I'm not tied to a league. I'm not tied to anything other than this YouTube channel and the love for futsal, and I'm willing to speak out. So let's get after it, guys. Let's build a better future here in the U.S. And stay tuned, because next week on Thursday, we will be interviewing Rob Andrews from United Futsal live here on the channel and starting that whole process. So we're going to start to talk to some of the organizations in this country and see if they can shine a little more light on why the system is the way it is and how can we fix it for the future. So mark your calendars for Thursday of next week. That's August 1st. And we will be going live at 9 p.m. Eastern time to start really digging into what's going wrong here in the U.S. And until I see you guys then, don't forget to play with your soul.